Excel is a very capable tool, and one of those capabilities would be analytical capabilities, meaning looking at a range of data and being able to determine this and that. And for that, we're going to look at these three different kinds of functions, which is if, COUNTIF, SUMIF, and then we'll look at if we can actually add more criteria. For example, I want this particular data from this particular range, and then I want to set these criteria. I only want the data if this happens and if that happens. So we're going to put several criteria to find the data, and for that we're going to use this range of data. Basically, we have these students, 10 students, and they achieve a particular marks, right? And we're going to grade them based on this very simple grade of pass fail, right? And fail is very simple. 0 until 49 is a fail, 50 until 100 is a pass, right? So we're going to start with an if function, if, right? And then we're going to open bracket. So the first thing that you can see here is a logical test, right? So as you can see, grade is dependent on marks, meaning if you get, for example, 50 marks, then it's a pass. If you get less than 50 marks, it's a fail. So what grade you get is based off the marks that you're getting. So we're gonna do the logical test based on the marks. And for F2, the grade for student 1 in F2, we base on student 1's marks in E2. So we're gonna take E2, right? And we're going to check if it is more than or less than something. So if it is more than 49, for example, right? So this is the logical test. We're going to do a comma, and so we immediately get a value if true, right? So we're going to use a pass here, of course, because more than 49 is 50 until 100. This is in this range. We're going to give it a pass, right? And then we're going to put a comma, and then value if false is, of course, if E2 turns out to be, if marks for that particular student turns out to be less than 50, meaning 49 or less, or 49 or less, 49 0 until 49, then there will be a fail. Right, so very simple. So we have, we'll look at that again. Logical test is E2 more than 49. We're checking if the mark in E2 is more than 49. If it is indeed true, right, meaning E2 is more than 49, then the student gets a pass. If not, value false, the student gets a fail. Very simple. Just gonna enter that, and then we're just gonna copy the same formula over. Right, so as you can see here, only one student gets a fail. Right, as you can see, this might not seem too valuable for 10 students and only 2 different types of grades. Might as well just manually go through it and say, I can see that one student fails this. But what if we have more students? What if we have 200 students, 500 students, and what if we have more elaborate grades such as these? Right, so this is, let's say we have a more elaborate grade table, fail until HD. Right, so there's 5 different types of grades, and of course 5 different ranges of marks for a particular grade. Right, so here, as you can see, this is arguably a better way of presenting data, because when I put 0 until 49 like this, I can readily take this into my formula, which I will show you later. Right, here I cannot readily take this because 0 until 49, 0-49 here is actually regarded as text by Excel. As you can see here, it is left aligned. The way fail is here, 100, 70, 60 and everything are all right aligned, which is numbers that you can calculate with. First things first, we're going to do what we call a clustered if, meaning nested or clustered if. Right, so there's several ifs that we're going to put here, and same thing, we're going to check this whether it is for HD or fail. Remember, when you're doing several ifs like this, right, it can get tricky because you have so many values to give. Right, so there's different values here. There's 5, HD, D, credit, and so on. So what you do is you're going to start with the extreme, either the extreme top or extreme bottom, meaning HD or fail, one or the other. Right, so let's say we're going to start from HD. What we're going to do is we have to make sure that HD obeys this range, meaning say that what we're going to do is we're going to look at 84, more than 84, or more than or equal to 85, for example. So we can just do something like that. Now, here, it is not at all a good idea to do this. It is not at all a good idea to do 100. Why? Because if it's less than or equal to 100, what will happen is that everyone will get an HD grade because all of these marks are less than 100. So it's not a good idea, right? So you have to really think about this logical test and make sure it's logical and really separate what value you're going to give to the cell, right? So here we're going to give HD to the cell if it's more than or equal to 85, right? As you can see here, because I put the value 85 like this, which is a number, I can immediately use it inside my logical test, right? So if value is true, then we can just give it an HD, right? And then comma. Now here is a bit of a problem because we have 4 other grades, but we only have one value to give. So what do? We just put another if, right? We just put another if and then do the next logical test, which is for distinction, which is for a D, where again we check this. We do the same thing, more than equal to 70, right? And then so here you'll notice one thing. We actually open the brackets many times, right? And you'll notice that the brackets actually has different colors, but the first bracket is always a black, right? So when you close the brackets in the end here, you just close it until you get that black color. So once you get the black color, you know that you're at the last bracket that you need to close, and you just press enter. Get HD for this one, then you just copy that and you will get the values for okay. Here we made a mistake, right? Very simple mistake, which is not having this dollar signs here, and the dollar signs here means absolute referencing, which means that I only want to refer to those cells and not have the formula go down as I copy it down. I'll show you what I mean. When we don't have these, right? Here, this formula here is J2, I2, J3, I3, J4, I4, which refers to these values here, right? J4, I4, J5, I5, and I6. So we're referring to these values here. But what happens that when I've copied that down, that goes down as well. So this is J2, I2, this becomes J3, I3, this becomes J4, I4, this becomes J5, I5. Hence, when we get to this, it's actually trying to refer to this part here. It goes down because it's relative referencing, which is not what we want. So I'm glad I made that mistake, because now we can just change that to the dollar sign, which is absolute referencing, and then copy and paste that, and we should get the that kind of value. Right, so we're done with if. Now we're going to do a count if, right? So we're just gonna copy these values from here. And we're gonna do a count if. Let's say, for example, we're gonna check, of the however many students I have, I want to check how many got HD, how many get D, and so on and so forth. Right, so I'm just gonna do a count if. It's a very simple formula. Basically, you just put the range, which is this range, right? So again, I'm gonna use the dollar sign to make sure that it's an absolute referencing, right? Then I'm gonna put the criteria. So that's the range. I'm gonna look through this range here, and I'm gonna look for this particular criteria. This is the criteria. I'm looking for HDs within that range, right? So here we have 3 HDs. Let's check 1, 2, and 3 HDs. Just gonna copy that down, right? And we get 3 distinctions, 1, 2, and 3. 2 credits, 1 and 2, 1 pass here, and then 1 fail here, right? So that is count if. Let's look at the formula again. Count if, range, and criteria. Right. Next up, we're gonna do what we call a sum if. For this, maybe we wanna have a bit more data, so I'm gonna unhide some of these columns here. Right. Let's say these students come from different states, and they were given different a value of monthly allowance. So maybe we're going to look at, let's say, correlation. So let's say total allowance of people who actually got HD, right? So maybe we call this allowance analysis or something. Right, so I'm just going to do a SUMIF. Right, so as you can see here, once we do a SUMIF, first is the range, meaning what is the range that we're going to analyze. Here we're going to analyze based on the grade, meaning we're going to look at, hey, you know, can you sum up all the monthly allowance for people who are getting HD, right? So the range we're looking at here is the range of grades, because we're looking at, this is the range that we are interested in, meaning the range that is forming the basis of our analysis here, right? And what is the criteria? We're going to look at, the criteria is HD, right? So maybe again, maybe you want to look at making that an absolute referencing. Right? So range is HD, and then sum range. So we are actually going to sum up the monthly allowance. Right? So again, I'm going to put that as absolute referencing. This is 1500. We'll see here this one HD, right, which is 1200. Another HD here is 100. Another HD here is 200. So 200 plus 100 is 300 plus 1200 is 1500. We'll just do that for everyone here. Right, so what I'm going to do is we'll look at the average range, which is basically we're going to average the monthly allowance, right? And we're going to look at, first and foremost, we're going to look at the kind of grades that they're getting. So it's just, this is the range that we're going to average it, right? And we're going to look at first criteria. We're going to look at this. This is the criteria range. We're going to look at this, and we're going to look for HD. Right, so this is the first criteria, meaning basically I'm telling Excel, hey Excel, I want you to average the monthly allowance, and I want you to base it on the grades that they're getting. Right, so this is the first criteria. Look at HD first. Right, that's what I'm telling Excel. Right, I'm gonna put a comma. Then I can actually put more criteria, criteria range 2, criteria range 3, and so on and so forth. Meaning I can actually fine tune my data. So for the next criteria, I'm going to look at, for example, this range, and I'm going to look at Selangor, for example. Oops. Right. So here, what's happening is that I'm just telling Excel, hey Excel, can you look at this range? Can you look at D2 until D12, D2 until D11? And I want you to average D2 until D11, but I want you to average them according to some criteria. The first criteria is I want the grade to be HD, right? So you look at F2 until F11, look for HD, right? Next, I want the state to be Selangor, right? So look at C2 until C11 and look for Selangor, right? So I'm just gonna press enter here. So now it's 650. So we look at the HD grade first and foremost. HD is here. This is 100. HD is here. Is from Kelantan. This is 200. And HD here is Selangor as well. And this is 1200. So there are two HDs from Selangor. This is one. This is the other one. 100 and 1200. That brings us to 1300. Divided by 2 is 650. And so that is how it's done.